Now what will it be? Death or exile?
Hello everyone and welcome to another Exiles film review. My name is Chris and today we'll be reviewing the 2020 musical Valley Girl, directed by Rachel Lee Goldenberg. Valley Girl is about two young lovers, Julie from the Valley and Randy from Hollywood, both from very different backgrounds, who defy their parents and their friends in an attempt to stay together. Joining me in this review is my fellow film exile, Adrienne. How are you doing? You alright?
Hi, Chris. I'm doing pretty good. You?
Good. So, Valley Girl is a remake of the 1983 original, starring Nicolas Cage. It's set in the 80s by way of a mother, played by Alicia Silverstone, telling her daughter a story about growing up in the Valley. Principal photography took place on this film way back in 2017. But its initial 2018 release was delayed due to controversies surrounding Logan Paul, who plays Mickey, the jerk ex-boyfriend of our protagonist. Originally set for a 2020 theatrical release, it was released on video on demand as a result of the corona crisis. With all that said, and the movie finally out, what did you think of it?
Well, from the trailer, I really liked the concept of the story, and it turned out to be just as sweet and as cute as I expected. It was only afterwards that I kind of thought, Grease meets Pretty in Pink. But because I didn't realize the story would be told much like, Mamma Mia did with ABBA songs. I knew they were going to be 80s songs, but I didn't know that they were going to be singing them.
Yeah.
But the film is still definitely its own thing, and it ended up being really fun with the songs and all the familiar romantic tropes, and yet it still felt really, really new.
Yeah, I thought it was a really enjoyable film as well. I'm not generally a fan of jukebox musicals, so musicals that make use of contemporary music or, real world music, let's say. I think the best thing about musicals is their ability to tell a story with the music. And I find using songs with lyrics that weren't designed for the specific purpose of the story is usually less effective, just in my opinion. But with that said, I think the songs that they did use did work as well as they possibly could. Also, I'm just a huge fan of 80s rock pop. So, how could I not enjoy listening to the great songs that they used in this? I thought the story was great, the casting was really good, and I particularly loved Jessica Roth as Julie. Her performance was great. So, what were your feelings of the casting and the acting performances?
Well, right off the bat, I really loved seeing Alicia Silverstone as Julie as a mom, and telling the story in flashback of, her romantic struggles. So there was that dynamic weaved through the story I really liked. And for me, that really helped in suspending disbelief with the musical, and buying into the hyper real fantasy aspect of, this girl meets boy story. And because she's telling the story to her daughter from memory, any exaggeration or, like I said, the fantasy 80s kind of or nostalgia really worked for me. But that's not to say that the performances weren't natural. I really enjoyed them.
Yeah, so did I.
Yeah, I had seen Josh Whitehouse in The Night Before Christmas, and that's Night with a K that was on Netflix. Yeah, it was a Christmas show, and I really liked him in that. So I was looking forward to seeing him in this one. He doesn't play anybody like that dramatically different, but I liked it. And I agree with you. Jessica Roth was wonderful. And it took me a minute to recognize Chloe Bennett from Agents Field as one of her friends, but I liked her in this too. And I think most importantly, too, I thought the story was really well written. I thought all the characters spoke very naturally. Like, I believed that they were teens. It felt very, real, even with the 80s lingo, which I thought was really funny and good and wonderful.
Yeah. So if we transition to technical aspects of the film, I thought the singing was of a very high standard. Like, Russell Crowe got a lot of heat for his singing performance in Les Mis, which I don't think was as bad as people suggested. But there's no performances like that in this film. Every note was delivered to perfection. But that being said, the most impressive technical aspect of this film for me was its look. This does not look like a cheap movie. This does not look like a TV movie. It's beautifully shot on film and really was made for the big screen, in my opinion. Those who listen to our reviews know that any film shot on photochemical film is looked upon favourably in my eyes, and this film's no different in that sense. However, this film has the look and feel of a prestige film. The camera work is impeccable, the colour grading is on point. So many films try to replicate the 80s feel, or what they think is representative of the 80s. And while this does have the bright colours, the shell suits, the leg warmers and all of that as well, the aesthetic they go for fits within the genre of the film that you mentioned, that hyper fantasy realism kind of blend, and it just all works really well. So what did you think of the technical aspects? How do you feel the film reflects the time period? Do you think they achieved what they were aiming for visually?
Well, I agree with you. The film looked great. I don't tend to notice technical right off the bat unless it's really bad and, or cheap looking. And if this wasn't that at all, it was, like you said, beautiful. And then you can just focus on the story. So I really like that. And as far as I think in musicals, sometimes they have a hard time finding somebody, they want to find somebody for the right character, and sometimes it's like they have to choose between picking the voice, or the actor. And so, like in the case with Russell Crowe, he gets kind of, criticized then for his singing. And the same thing with Gerald Butler in Phantom of the Opera. Like, he acted the character beautifully, and maybe his singing, like, he's not a singer, but he can sing well. So I agree with you. Everybody sounded great in this one. The beginning of the film was very up-tempo, but then as the story gets going, I thought that it was easy to care about the characters. The film slowed down where it needed to as far as, pacing. And that's just very important to me in drawing me into a film, when today some films tend to be at you, and with a musical, which can feel, at you with song. I thought this was very well done story-wise. I thought the film captured a very sincere and whimsical take on the 80s, in keeping with Alicia as the mom, her memories of the time. And I really enjoyed the fantasy 80s without it being too over the top. And I still love seeing the romantic grand gestures played out with the characters, in keeping with the intense emotions of the songs. I thought that fit really well. And I agree with you about using cover songs sometimes not always being the best fit, but I did really, really love the medley of songs they used in the aerobic scene.
Yeah, for sure. So where does this film rank in terms of your favourite musicals, and would you recommend it?
Well, I wouldn't call myself like a diehard musical fan, but then when I make a list, it's pretty long. Do you want me to list?
Give us a handful.
Okay. Well, I love The Greatest Showman. I mentioned Phantom of the Opera with Gerard Butler earlier, and My Fair Lady and Mary Poppins, Enchanted, Singing in the Rain, The Unsinkable Molly Brown with Debbie Reynolds, Mamma Mia, but just the first one, The Sound of Music, Grease, and the live action Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast, and then, White Christmas and Wizard of Oz. And those are just all endlessly rewatchable to me. I've watched those several times. I'll keep rewatching them. And I don't know if I see myself rewatching Valley Girl quite so many times, but I'll probably definitely revisit it at some point because I did have a really good time watching it, and it captured something different about the 80s for me that I really liked. So yes, I'd recommend it absolutely.
Yeah, those are great. I agree. Like, my favorites include Grease, The Greatest Showman, Les Mis, Mary Poppins, Bedknobs and Broomsticks, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, The Sound of Music, Wizard of Oz. Although it's not really fair to compare Valley Girl to timeless classics like those, even in terms of more contemporary musicals too, I'm not sure it's as good as a Pitch Perfect or a Mamma Mia, for example. But would I recommend it? Definitely. It's a really enjoyable film. So have you got any final thoughts to give about this film?
No, I don't really have anything else to add other than it was a really enjoyable film, and I definitely recommend it.
Excellent. So where can people find you and maybe talk about the film with you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Truth Love Faith.
Excellent. And I've been Chris, and you can find me at Vinaldo7 on Twitter. And until next time, stay exiled.